The Intertech Group and the Zucker family are proud to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment.
Welcome to We the Women. This is our celebration of the 19th Amendment. Exactly 100 years ago, on August 18th, 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified, giving women the right to vote. To celebrate, we'll be talking to women from around South Carolina, thought leaders, movers and shakers. We'll ask them about how they have used their voice and what they have done to contribute to our great democracy. Enjoy the conversation.
This project is about the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. I want to start by asking you about, do you remember your first election you ever got to vote in?
Wow. So I was thinking about this, I'm
Yeah.
55.
Okay.
So, I can't say that I remember it well, but I was thinking about all those, when you're that age, all the things that are life-changing from getting your driver's license to being able to vote. So, I know I was very excited about it. And, as a kid, very engaged in politics from, high school and a family background of just, family get-togethers. We always talked politics.
Yeah.
So.
Is that something you're comfortable doing, being in the news business, exercising your right to vote?
Yes, yeah. I always think that you look back on where you came from.
Yeah.
And I had two very strong grandmothers, I'll say, in my family history. And I think the one that I think of that was very influential was my paternal grandmother. And I love to talk about both of them, but family get-togethers, we were very political. But when I look back on, where it came from, she left home she grew up in North Platte, Nebraska.
Okay.
And,
Small town.
very small town, but she had to leave home to go to high school.
Yeah.
And, she left home to go live with a political family that had two kids, and she helped raise the kids and went to high school and got her diploma.
Yeah.
So she was this interesting rural, kid growing up, got her high school diploma, lived with a political family and learned so much about politics that, she didn't necessarily fit the rural prototype or stereotype anymore. But, then she had 5 children. And again, what I remember as a kid growing up is it was always family get-togethers, very political, and she was right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So, I never knew any different as a female.
Sure.
And growing up, high school, I was always after some cause.
Yeah.
I wanted to run for president from the 7th grade on. I was my class president, student body president, editor of the newspaper, and so I just never knew any different than to be involved.
Right.
So I take it back to that family and just how you grow up.
Yeah. So now you're the publisher of the Postman Courier. So for people who don't know, do you want to talk about what does a publisher do?
Sure. Overall, you see the business operations.
Yeah.
So we have what I love about the business is it's just multiple facets, this mini manufacturing, from HR to finance to advertising to news.
Right.
But, everything we do, all is because we want to support the First Amendment.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we do what we do. And ultimately, when we need to raise money on the advertising side or we're having these great events, you want people to certainly know that the newspaper has this good, strong community image. But ultimately, it's the ability through the newsroom to make a difference in the community and be engaged.
Yeah.
So just overseeing all of that, and every day is different, which is super exciting.
So one of the things that I've always admired about you is you have this big job, but you also have a big life. You're out and about in the community, maybe less now with COVID, but I see you on boards, I see you volunteering, and then you have a big family life. You have a little, miniature donkeys.
Farm, yes.
Yeah. How do you balance all those things?
Well, I have a great support system, and I would tell you that growing up, when you're young, you think that it's just normal to be busy. And I have 3 children, now adult children, and my mom used to just laugh and say, I would see you coming and going with the kids, and it was like, they were trailing behind you, and you guys were just always on the move. But my husband's been very supportive, incredibly supportive, and we were both these young managers working 60 hours a week. Who's going to pick up the kids, and I've got an early morning, and I was that employee manager that went in, with a blue pump on and a brown pump on because you're so tired in the mornings. But we both decided, it's kind of a funny story, that we really needed to concentrate on one career more than the other. And he came home one night and he said, I really think you have more of an opportunity as a female to move with your career. And it's so strange because I said, it did. And I said, it's something that I need to think about. And he knows me well enough that the next night he came home and he said, well, you're not going to need to think on this long, because through work I'd had opportunities, to apply for this. And of course we lived around all of our family. And anyway, he came home that night and he said, I went ahead and quit my job today. And I was like,
Really?
You did what? So
How old were you when that happened?
26.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so I went immediately in. I worked for Gannett.
Yeah.
And, I had passed up some opportunities, and I told him, I told my boss, I said, next opportunity that comes along, I said, I'm probably going to be interested in it. And Larry Whitaker was my boss at the time, a great mentor of mine. And it wasn't long before I took my first job as a director in Fort Collins, Colorado. So,
Colorado one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
but I couldn't have done it without
Sure.
my husband.
Sure. And you two and the rest of your family, you've moved around the country many times.
Many
Do you want
times.
to talk about that, what that's like
Yeah.
to go into a community, new again, prove yourself, figure out what the community needs from its paper?
You
How
know,
do you do that?
So what's been interesting is when you move with the newspaper, it's a little different, and I guess it's automatically puts you in that community group, right?
Yep.
You're a part of United Way, you're a part of Rotary, and all of a sudden you get indoctrinated really quickly because of the position at the newspaper, and everybody wants your ear. So I think because of that, it's been great. And for me, it's been, I say the communities are really so similar.
Yeah.
Right? It's the people that makes them different. And I think getting to know the people and what they think is important in their community is always interesting. But they're not so different, but the layers of people involved.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a phenomenal career.
Yeah.
And you walk away from each community. It's hard to leave a community. Super hard to leave a community, but you walk away always hoping that you've been able to make a difference in that community.
Yeah. So you moved to Charleston in 2012, is that right?
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit, about what was the process of getting to know this city and getting to know this newspaper and its legacy and becoming a part of it. To me, I meet you and I feel like you've always been here, but
And it's weird because you kind of feel that way every newspaper you go to, and you become a part of the fabric of the community. But I love Charleston, and what I said about Charleston, we were in Myrtle Beach before we moved here, and I had always worked for publicly held companies. My dad and I used to have these great debates about publicly held companies versus privately held companies, and but I had gotten to know the people at the Postman Courier because we had outsourced printing and packaging, and so over the years got to know them. So very close, and even when we were in Pennsylvania, Michigan, we would come to Charleston to visit. And my husband and I said, that would be the one place we really were like, okay, we're done moving, kids are out of college, but man, if we ever had the chance to go to Charleston, that would be great. But coming to this community, it's I say it's that traditional Southern community, very hospitable, and I felt, of course, very welcoming. But learning the fabric of the community, I remember the things that I watch for when we first moved to the community, we stayed, of course we had to stay at a hotel first, then you get your temporary housing. But I love to go around when nobody knows who you are and ask them, well, do you read the Postman Courier? Well, what do you think about it? Or you just watch at a restaurant. Are people reading the paper? Are they passing it around? And I also, I hope this is okay to bring up, but I also look at like who's reading the paper. And I can tell you this community, the black community and the white community, there was a love that I felt for the newspaper, and they felt good about the newspaper. And you don't always get that. So, I thought we were at a really good starting place to just continue to build on a really great legacy newspaper.
So it's a big responsibility. What do you think makes a good newspaper?
Well, connection to the community. What makes me sad today is, and I still have so many friends in newspapers. I lived in 9 different states and have some great memories, but it makes me sad that newspapers have had to regionalize. Because I think that, in my opinion, that's the death of a newspaper. You really need to stay very local and know what's going on in your community. Our reporters, I need to be out in the community. People need to see us at the grocery store. They need to see us at church. Our kids in school and just that community involvement. And I think at the end of the day, because we're a part of the fabric of the community, we're able to report on the community and connect in a way that makes sense.
So what is it now? Is this July time? In March, things started to constrict with coronavirus, and we started this conversation by talking about this big life you have. That has constricted too. How has the last few months changed your life, and what have you learned about what's important, and about newspapers and leadership?
It's become a Zoom world. It's funny. We still have the board meetings. Right, we have all these meetings, and I was laughing with somebody. I said, I see everybody in a whole new light now, because it's their dog, their cat. I was on a board meeting the other day, and the men on the meeting, they were just laughing. They're like, what? I haven't had a shirt and tie on, since pre-COVID, and so everybody is just more casual. In the board meetings than what you would normally see, shirt and tie. And but I think definitely a Zoom world. And what I saw, everybody in the first couple of weeks, it was Zoom overload. And then I think everybody just kind of had to find the new balance. But we're talking about the 75th anniversary, commemorative things, and we're doing it on Zoom, or we're doing small group meetings. And so it's like everybody still wants that camaraderie and that sense of being together, but we're just having to do it a little different. But it's been hard, overall on the community, on individuals, and on our lives. I think everybody's tired. Right?
There has to be an end to it.
There's got to be an end to this. It's like I told the team, it's that hurricane that it's just not ever going to end. Makes a hurricane seem so simple now, and that's terrible to say.
So you told me 26 years old, your husband believed in your career and steps back. You go to Gannett and raise your hand. I don't know about you, but there was a moment in my career, maybe even not that far past it, where I went from growing and being kind of the student of the career and learning to becoming a mentor, to feeling like I understood my place and giving back. Do you remember that moment for you, or that part of your career?
Yeah, that gives me goosebumps. That is such a great question. And being a female growing up in what was predominantly a male's world, when you're talking about newspapers, I mean, I still get Mr. PJ because I guess initials stand for a man's name. But you had, I think, females in the workplace. I was surprised at, men would say, okay, it's professional jealousy. And when I first started out the business, it almost felt like women didn't work together to promote one another, that you're in this new business, this new world, and it was almost like you had to work harder, and so it was just different than what it is now, which I'm really excited to see where we are today as women and where we've evolved with our relationships in business. But mentoring, for me, has always been incredibly important. And over the years, my success for me internally was always defined through the people that were promoted that I had the opportunity to work with. But I will tell you, from a true mentoring, it's happened here. And I don't know if it's because, I'm now 55, but, you do, I think, reach that age when you realize that it's the next generation that has to carry on. And I feel like we have such a responsibility in the newspaper business that, again, it does give me goosebumps. And so I find myself more here trying to do those teaching moments. And I'm like, I hope they don't think I'm just old. I hope they really appreciate that this is coming from, a place in my heart that means well. But it's incredibly important for the next generation because I won't be here forever.
So 55, I'm not going to predict your retirement, but, over the next 10, 15 years, have you thought about what you want that to look like and do you think women think about legacy in the way men do?
I think we don't. And certainly in our business, we've had a lot of changes. So where maybe people were starting to think about legacy, I think there was a lot of disruption. For us, though, and when I look at my career and where I am now and where the industry is, my legacy and my hope is that I help bring us through and define the other side. Print's very strong, but it's really is a generational thing. And so digital is the future. I'm not saying that print's going to die, in 2 years, 3 years, but at some point our digital subscription growth is imperative. And so the work that we're doing around that right now is just critical to our future. And I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I want to help get us through to the other side.
Right. So you look maybe out in our newsroom or out in the other floors, women in their 20s where you were, in that moment at 26. What advice do you have for them?
Well, I hope, the advice that I would say is just don't be afraid to ask, to try new things. I fear sometimes that women aren't as good as men at asking for that next role. We tend to want to do very good in the role that we're in, and I think we do really good work, and we want to make people happy. I mean, we're that nurturing, person, but I think sometimes we're not always the spokesperson for ourselves, right? We want to build everybody else up, but I mentioned Larry Whitaker earlier, and I go back, had some great mentors along the way, but Larry always told me, he said, when there are training opportunities that come up, I do want you to ask if you're interested, because he said you can't always rely on me to say this is a good opportunity for you. He said, you've got to want it. And, he said you have to be willing to go for it. So I really hope that young women today aren't bashful, and that they'll, hold up their hand and ask for things that they're interested in. So.
All right, well, thank you for spending some time with me.
You're very welcome. Thank you.